Hi Larry, welcome to Arcade Club.
Glad to be here, thank you.
We're in the workshop. It is the quietest place in the building at the moment because it's a busy Saturday night. Can I ask you a bit about Defender? Well, start off with Defender. Why would you say that Defender succeeded?
That's a great question. My best answer is lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Which, as a designer, we always want to catch and very rarely do. It was ridiculously hard. People who played their first game of Defender, it lasted 30 seconds, and they don't even know if they participated.
Yeah.
But it was also, it looked so different and so much cooler than the games of the time that there was an attraction to try and see what you could make it do. What did the game do?
Was that part of your design to make it different, or was it just something messing with the program?
No, we wanted to blow the world away. We wanted to do the coolest, most amazing stuff, which I think is the case all the time. We're always trying, how can we push, how can we make it better, how can we be different, what can we do that's new and novel, and of course all of that still has to hook the player. It has to be something that they play and want to come back. And when we watch people play a new game, we're not watching how many people want to try it, we're really watching how many people, after they have that 30-second experience, and like they're on their third man and they're reaching in their pocket for the next quarter before they've even finished the game. That's what we looked for, and Defender really had that. It was remarkable. And
so you think that's why it succeeded, because of the difficulty of it, would you say?
It was a combination of the difficulty and the coolness. The coolness made people go through our hideous set of hurdles to get good at the game, and it just worked. And it's not a scientific formula, and it's not really repeatable. And there are games that were really hard that nobody gave a second look at, and there are games that are really cool that didn't have enough interest to keep people trying.
What's your favourite memory of working on it, on Defender?
My favorite memory was the first day we put it on test. We had shown the game mostly complete but incomplete in October of '80 at the AMOA show in Chicago. Right. And there's a really long, crazy story about the 2 days leading up to that, because it wasn't the game wasn't really ready to be shown, on the Sunday before the Tuesday. But it was looked at by arcade owners who looked at it. It had all these buttons and the joystick, and it was hard to figure out, and they looked at it and didn't give it a second thought. It was, nobody will ever play this. So we kind of came out of that show a little dejected, and now hoping that we could finish the game off and make it something that people would play. And we put it out on test at Mother's Pinball in Mount Prospect. That was the test location in the Metro Chicago area. And Eugene had some conflict the night it went out, so he was not there, but I was there, and it was crazy. There were 20 people around the game. People would play it one after the other and last 30 seconds, and the next person wanted to get their turn for their 30 seconds, and it was making more money. Again, if a game gets played, two games that both get played the whole time the arcade is open, the one with the shortest play per game is going to make the most money. And
what was that in your mind when you made it?
No. This was Williams' first video game since they were licensing them from other companies in the Pong era.
Pinball's before, yeah.
Right, and we were experienced in pinball. It was the first video game. Eugene and I and Sam Dicker and Chuck Blake and Tom Hart, we were all pretty young and didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
and didn't have anybody to teach us. We carried over as much as we could from pinball, and we, did stuff.
I wonder if that's why it's so different, because of your pinball background at that time. I can only think of, was Scramble? No, I think Scramble was
Scramble came after
Defender. I think that was inspired by Defender. I think maybe.
I'm guessing it was. I'm guessing it was Scramble was in development at the same time, and that it was. And Scramble. It's really not reasonable to say it's a game like Defender.
That's just the same horizontal scrolling.
You're horizontal scrolling a spaceship in both cases and shooting at things in front of you. But Defender was this is a huge thing in this process. Defender was the first game where something off screen was happening that was relevant. Okay, Scramble.
Yeah, the radar and everything.
Scramble we called a wallpaper game. It was just cranking out wallpaper, and it was it's just whatever was put on the wallpaper. That's the next thing you deal with.
Yeah.
Okay, Defender. There was a universe much bigger than the screen, and no game had done that. And what happened off screen mattered and was your responsibility. No game had ever done that.
First scrolling game, was it? Or the first scrolling landscape, maybe?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably, and I'm trying to think. There were driving games that like Night Driver was out before it, and where you
Superbug,
were, but again, it was really revolutionary, and so this whole game was really complex to understand what it was all about and what was there and what you were doing and what your interface was all a lot. And
were you limited by the hardware, or did you really push it, or was there more things you wanted to do with it?
What Eugene and Sam did with the hardware was nothing short of pure magic.
Yeah.
Okay, using conventional programming techniques, you could do about maybe 20% of the objects on screen or the terrain moving or the scanner being updated. You could probably do about 20%. So it was a Apollo 13 issue. This is what we got. This is what we want to get done. Let's do weirder and weirder things with our programming to get the performance better. And it was somebody who writes programs today would hear the story and look at it and go, "You got to be kidding me." Okay, and it was what the computer hardware of that era was capable of, and what Eugene wanted to achieve in the game, and the best game designers.
So who did the sound? Sorry, because the sound is iconic. Who did that?
The sound is really a great story.
That is amazing.
Because the soundboard for those geeks out there had a 6800 microprocessor running at 1 megahertz. Actually, it was 3.58 over 4 megahertz, so about 800. What was it, about 8? Whatever it is, about 8/10 of a megahertz. What would be that, 800,000 hertz? Yeah, 800 kilohertz. It had that processor. It had 512 bytes of program code RAM. Bytes, not 512K, not 512 meg.
Program code.
The program code, 1, 2, 3. When you get to 500, that's the entire program.
Wow.
And most instructions are about 2 bytes, so that you got room for 200 instructions in the RAM.
Wow.
It had, I think it had 256 bytes of RAM. Bytes, not K, not meg, not gig, not tera. 256 bytes of RAM.
Yep.
And it had an 8-bit D-Day converter, which is just you put a number in 8 bits from 0 to 255, and it moves the voltage to that level. So to make a sine wave, you have to in real time, as time is going forward, put out the 0, then 1/10, then 2/10, and in time, that's how you make a sine wave, which would then go,
But they're not like sine waves. They sound complicated.
You
all that era Williams sounds are like earthy and powerful.
Williams created this soundboard in the pinball department,
right.
And Eugene worked with Steve Ritchie on a legendary pinball called Firepower. It was as important to the series of pinball innovations as Defender was to the video.
Yeah.
And he wrote 2 programs called G-Wave and Vari-Wave, and the code is about that many instructions. Again, remember, we don't have a lot of room to put it. And there was a couple of nested loops that did envelopes and waves based on parameters that you'd take out of a table.
Yeah.
And so you'd set up these parameters that made this sound, these parameters that made that sound. And he did this incredible sound package for Firepower. Probably 2/3 of the Defender sounds were sounds that were used in Firepower pinball.
Right.
The bomber, when you hit a bomber, that is the sound of the multi-ball start. The legendary free man sound is what Firepower made it game over. It would speak, it would go, Firepower destroyed you. And the Swarmers, the little dee was a sound out of Firepower. Sam had the sound responsibilities on Defender. He made some additional sounds using those programs that Eugene wrote. He made some white noise generators. One makes the thrust go in the background. And something that somebody commented on, that sound system makes one sound at a time, in addition to the thrust sound, which will overlay any of the others.
That's amazing. Is Defender, would you say, the game that you're most proud of, or is there anything else?
No, Robotron.
I've not heard of Robotron. Have you heard of Robotron?
Robotron.
The one that came, is this when you started Vid Kidz, was it? Or was it...
Vid Kidz, we did Stargate as our first Vid Kidz game.
Defender 2, yeah.
Right. We, Eugene and I had talked about becoming entrepreneurs and going off to do this to get compensated the way we thought we should, given our input to the revenue.
Yeah.
And we had talked about it for the year plus that I was with the company to the point where we left, and we didn't want to leave. We really we ended up moving after the success of Defender, Williams ramped up and hired more people, more design groups to make more games, and they opened up a new studio on Kedzie Avenue, where they put all these tiny offices next to each other with a bad HVAC system. And there were different people like me. I had a loud radio that I liked to play.
Yeah.
And the doors had to be open or you would suffocate in the office. And it was uncomfortable. Everything was uncomfortable.
Right.
And we just had one day of not having a good day where we met each other in the hallway and said, you wanna go do this now? Yeah. So we went to the president, Mike Stroll, told him that we were leaving the company, and he tried to talk us out of it. And then he said, well, if you're going to do this, I understand your vision, but do it for us.
All right, that's okay. Yeah.
And so we flew to New York with Mike to meet with Luna Castro, who was the chairman of the company. And we talked about making an arrangement to do a game. They wanted a game like in 15 or 16 weeks. And then they wanted a first right of refusal for other games we would do. And my answer was, if you want a game in 16 weeks, it's going to be Defender Deluxe. Asteroid Deluxe had come out in that time frame. And it's like, okay, if you want Defender Deluxe, we can give you that in 16 weeks. A new game's going to take longer. And they said, let's do it. And Eugene immediately changed the name to Super Defender. And
was the original release called Defender 2 and then it was changed to Stargate, or is it the other way?
The other way around. And again, Eugene gave it the title Super Defender, and that's what we were developing under.
Yeah.
The sales guys at Williams were going, I just sold 70,000 Defenders. I can't sell another game called Defender. So then we were looking for other names. We came up with Stargate, which was a feature that we put in the game. And we ended up with a compromise where the logo has Stargate with the Defender kind of as the shadow. If you look at the marquee, if you look at the marquee of Stargate, you see Stargate, and it's beaming back to the distance to Defender, being the shadow of Stargate. And that was the name of the game until long after Stargate was out of production. Someone came forward to Williams and said, "I own this intellectual property," and
for Stargate.
For Stargate, they had a Stargate trademark for something. I'm sure it wasn't for video games. I don't really remember the details. And they filed suit. You're gonna pay us a royalty, or we're gonna sue you. And they ended up making a settlement for nothing or next to nothing, with an agreement to change the name of the game in anything future they did, which was like the 2600 cartridge. 2600 cartridge came out as Defender 2.
Right.
And
so during this time, are you still working on pinballs? You doing that in conjunction with the video development?
No.
You'd finished then?
No, when Defender was being developed, I was helping with Defender and working on a new pinball operating system and Black Knight with Steve Ritchie.
Black Knights, yeah.
And then I did one more game while I was still working there, which was Jungle Lord. And then Eugene,
I've seen that.
Eugene and I left. And we did Stargate, Robotron, Blaster home game, and Blaster arcade game. And then the industry collapsed. Eugene moved to California and went to get his master's. And I was going to semi-retire, but kind of got sucked in to working on pinball again in '84, and stayed with pinball for the next 15 years.
Right. So what do you love about Robotron then? Why is it your most famous, favorite game?
Let me start with Robotron was fun after 3 days of development. Okay?
So you knew you kind of had a hit straight away?
That's never happened before or after in the history of game development.
Yeah.
Okay, that somebody worked for 3 days and you bring up feasibility models of what you're thinking of, and let's try this. And the control was totally revolutionary, with one stick to move, one stick to fire. We made a control panel with two 2600 joysticks, and we wired it into the game. And Eugene brought up the robots, the electrodes, and the grunts. And that played pretty much like the first wave. There was no Mommy, Daddy, Mikey. It played like the first wave, where there's a bunch of grunts around you, and at about 30 grunts, it became total adrenaline. And we both in Defender or Stargate Robotron, we had put together a multi-threaded, multitasking operating system, which was really early in the video game world. So we could just say, I want 5 of these, 10 of these, 20 of these, and each one goes and runs with its own AI to do whatever it needs to do.
That's the amazing thing. Is I know some of the experts say there's a bit of slowdown in the game, but that's very, very slightly. Yeah. So it's amazing what you got from the hardware.
Well, and between Defender and Robotron, they developed a blitter chip,
right,
which would actually, at high speed, move an entire image. It would be at 1 millisecond per pixel. Or maybe it might have been 3 pixels per millisecond. We had a 3-way bus, I'm not sure. It was lightning fast, so if we tried to do Robotron on the Defender hardware, there probably would have been 10 or 12, maybe 15 robots, and that was really all it could do. And on this system, we could do probably 120.
I played Blaster recently on proper hardware in Illinois, in the Galloping Ghost in Illinois, sure. And I've always played it on emulation, thinking, it's okay. But when you're actually stood by the machine and you're playing it with a proper stick and buttons, I think it's really good. I think actually it's like underrated. And was that the same hardware as Robotron? Same kind of blitter thing.
It had the blitter. We added a feature which was auto erase, which to make a robot appear on the screen, you write all his dots in the memory spaces. Then to make him move, you erase all the spots, and then you write all the spots in his next position. For Blaster, again, we had so much massive, even with the blitter, we had so much massive number of large objects because they were growing as they got close to you, that we couldn't get the performance we wanted. Even with the blitter would draw and the blitter would erase, but if you didn't have to erase, okay, you could draw twice as much.
So I think Space Area copied a lot from that game. You know,
yeah, it was the same kind of game in roughly the same time frame. And so that system had an auto erase feature. You could turn it on, and the video beam tracks top to bottom on an old CRT, and the beam would read out the object and erase the memory as it read it out, so that by the time the beam came back for its next sweep, you had to put all the new positions of the objects, but you didn't have to erase them. In the game, the outer space modes all use auto erase, but the robot grid modes were not able to do it because you couldn't keep up. They ran slow and overloaded. And again, if you can't get the next frame out there before the beam comes back, which is a 60th of a second, then you either get flicker or tearing or bad videos. So,
did you have anything to do with is it called Duramold? The Duramold cabinet, was that? Did you have anything to do with that, or were you just the software side at that stage?
We were just the software side.
So it's quite unusual, isn't it? It's quite rare now.
The cabinet, they made some bubbles on them, and they made a lot of blasters on them, where a lot is not a big number because Blaster didn't have that big a production.
That was the video game Crash, wasn't it? 83.
Yeah.
But we didn't really have it in this country, but I know you did. We were all into like home computers.
We did, and that was that was the last game we did. That was the end of our company when the prospect and as a developer, okay, these you get your heart tied up in these things. So when it is as much work and effort to make a game that's a flop as it is to make one that's successful. And
so you were disappointed, were you?
We were disappointed, and the market was going down, and the next step was likely even more challenging. So
what did you do after that? After you wrapped up Vid Kidz, did you carry on with pinball?
I did. I was playing around with some ideas for home video games which hadn't crashed yet. I wanted to, and I wish I would have stuck with it. I started prototyping a Wheel of Fortune game, and while I was working on that in '84, which again, pinball had crashed before video. And
now it's the Resurgence now.
Williams kept it on life support. And they had just done a couple of games. They did Laser Q and another game that they had made some uptick in sales and interest. And I ended up, teaming up with Barry Ausler, Joe Kamenko, Mark Springer, Gary Berge, mechanical engineering, and we did the Space Shuttle pinball machine, which had a big dramatic uptick effect for the company, and we really went on a really great run from '84 forward, from that game, and I stayed in pinball
for 15
years, becoming director of engineering of the group in about '95.
when did Williams Pinball crash? Was it around that time?
October 25th, 1999, they closed the doors.
A few more years then.
We worked on this Pinball 2000 project. You've Got a Revenge from Mars upstairs.
Yeah, amazing game, yeah.
And that was going to be, we kind of stalled 94, 95, 96, 97. We were really on the bad downtrend. And, we were challenged with do something to shake this thing up. And George Gomez and Pat Lawler were watching what we were doing. We were working on, it's really funny, we were working on a concept that looks a lot like the Stern and Jersey Jack games of today, with a big color monitor.
Yeah, on the back box.
In the back box.
Yeah.
And George and Pat looked at this and said, these idiots are going to kill the company. And they went off on their own without telling anybody and built a foam core prototype of showing the how Pinball 2000 would work, with the half silvered mirror on the glass and the monitor, hanging down. And everybody saw it, and pretty much there was a lot of differences of opinions on the monitor and the back box at the time, and everybody was like, oh my god, we can have the ball hit stuff and blow it up.
Was there a Star Wars one as well?
Star Wars
was just two pinball.
There were just two. Star Wars was the last pinball game Williams ever made.
Right.
And we engineered a beautiful platform, and Attack from Mars earned reasonably well, and actually I think we had our first profitable quarter in like 3 years when Attack was running. And then Star Wars was the second game, and our problem was Star Wars would have had to run for 10 months or something in production for us to get a third game ready in time. And it's unfortunate they made the decision we're not going to go back to pinball losing money. The other part of Williams at that time was a slot machine group, and they had just started to make money.
Right.
And Wall Street wasn't valuing the stock like other slot machine companies because they had this money-losing appendage. So it when Williams went from that profitable quarter to losing money to maybe a dry spell, because with the overhead, you got to make games to make margin every month to pay your overhead. And if you stall the line for 3 months, you're spending all the money and it becomes a loss.
So what did you do after that? What was your next move?
2 years before they shut down pinball, actually 3 years, they mixed up some of the gaming and pinball guys. The gaming group was not successful in '96, and they thought, we got all these really creative guys doing our pinballs that don't make money, and we got guys that need to learn about making entertaining games, making our slot machines, and they mixed up the groups. And so I was running the pinball group and half of the slot group.
Right.
And then they, a couple years into it, they hired a new VP to run the gaming group, and he reorganized it back to the way it was. So all the pinball guys were back just doing pinball, but we had all learned the slot machine business by the seat of our pants. I mean, we were asked to infuse our talents to make these games better, really not understanding the business. And after going through that, the thing that a pinball machine and a slot machine had in common at the time is you put a coin in to start both of them. And after that, there's nothing. The age of the audience is different. The concept of winning money really changes everything psychologically about how you make a good game. And we had learned all that and gone through it and had some success. And they, on October 25th, 1999, they fired everyone in the pinball department.
Right.
And we looked at it, and I said, these guys, if we blink right now, they're going to all get jobs somewhere else. So in a day, I needed to decide, should I try to do something? And I started a slot machine studio.
Right.
And I had talked up and gotten 4 of the guys that were really talented to come be part of it. And 2 of them joined me, Scott Slomiani and Duncan Brown. And the other 2 got cold feet and went a different way. And about a year or 2 into it, those other 2 came and joined our company too. That was 19 years ago. We've been making successful slot machines mostly for IGT. They're the big slot maker in Reno. And we did a lot with the Norwegian Lottery, Norse Tipping, which runs a government-run route in the country of Norway.
So you're still kind of in the gaming industry, aren't you?
Well,
kind of.
Well, up till very recently, where just in the last couple of months, we made the decision to close the studio. And the guys that were working for me, we found positions. They found positions, and my last guy starts his new job Monday, 2 days from now.
Right.
And we've still got a company with IP and licenses that needs a little bit of management, but I'm calling it a semi-retirement. And,
yeah, why not?
At 62, that's okay.
So just to finish on Larry, if you look back at Robotron and Defender, which is like the big Williams games as far as we're concerned, what do you think the enduring appeal is? Why are people still playing them out there now, like 38 years later? Is it 38? Something like that.
Yeah. They are very well balanced, self-contained worlds that are it's well understood how the things work. There's a lot of randomness, so it doesn't play the same ever 2 games or 2 times in a row. And with practice, you gain skills and it's very tactical and very muscle memory. If you take a break for a while, you need to reestablish that to play well. There is no game that gives you adrenaline rushes like Robotron. You get into these
it makes you sweat,
crazy, insane situations, and some of the time you fight your way out of it, and it's not luck. Okay, you do it with your skill and all the practice you've had.
And it's exhilarating for the players.
It's exhilarating.
Yeah.
And it's a bunch of simple mechanics that can be understood in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. What the guys are there and what they do, and it's well balanced and interesting. A lot of the games they make now, the designers they have 20 guys making all the 3D world before you can spend 3 days to do a feasibility on your game. Well, they build a 3D world, and then they design 30 stages and 10 bosses, and then they start to go, what should we have it do? What are the game rules? What's the balance? What's the trade-off? What's the risk-reward? Risk-reward is huge in any game. Okay, and anyone who's played Robotron knows going after Mikey, Mommy, Daddy is much to the end of a lot of pursuits, or you go get them and you pull it off, and it's like, wow, I did that.
Yeah, simple to learn, hard to master. That's like the old games, because you were limited by the graphics and the memory. Just that everything was gameplay.
I'm thrilled we were limited by graphics.
Yeah, it pushes you, doesn't it? Yeah.
Because we had to do cool games.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they had to make money in 3.5 minutes.
The newest games, they're done by 50-man teams, and and we learned it on Blaster. Blaster was not our best game. Blaster might not even be a good game. It's certainly not a great game. And we were pushing the envelope with, trying to do first-person 3D. I have a great understanding of it now. We didn't then of what makes 3D work or not work, first-person, because everything in the, again, Defender, you watch your whole world, you see the scanner, you know where everything is. Well, in first-person 3D, the stuff that's about to kill you is this big, and the stuff that you have to worry about is back there this big.
Yeah.
Star Wars was a really great one.
Yeah.
And first-person driving games were great because they simulate something that you don't have, you can deal with cars big and small as you get to them. But it was something. So we spent so much time making it work and making the technology work that there isn't much gameplay there.
No.
So we were blessed by not having the technology, so that we had to come up with a fun game, and we're blown away that this amount of time later anybody cares.
Yeah, there's still a massive community, as you've seen.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
it's wonderful, and to watch the guys that are like monster great.
Yeah.
Play Defender and Robotron, or Missile Command, for that matter. It's a joy. It is unbelievable.
What's your score on Robotron?
In the days in the early '80s, I played up till I could get 1 million every once in a while. And now my typical score on a decent game is about 200,000 or 300,000.
Yeah, me too.
My son, who's 17, he started playing when he was 13, and so I was playing along with him at that time, and got my skills back up to 500,000 was the best. And every time he'd get a high score, I'd play till I knocked it off. And we seesawed all the way till I got to 500,000, and that's still sitting on my game. That's when he quit.
What about Defender? What's your score on that?
I'm not a good Defender player. Something like 70 or 80,000.
It's a lot more than me.
And if I played today, I probably would struggle to get to 30,000.
Yeah.
I'll have to try it after we wrap this up.
Anyway, so thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the evening. It's been good to meet you, and a pleasure for you to come over and see us.
Thank you very much. It's been a blast to be here.
Blaster. Thank you.